Chapter 6. Message of the Fourth Day. Again we urge humanity to stop thinking that they are the only living, intelligent humanoid beings in this universe. Such a belief would be utterly stupid, naive, and dare I even say ignorant. If you people of Earth care to study all the old writings now existing on your planet, you will find that on several occasions, our presence, and the presence of other non-Earth beings, who have visited your planet are mentioned. We shall now continue where we stopped yesterday. So, even though those humans who were faithful to us no longer had a transmitter-receiver to contact us with, we still followed them, we watched and guarded them from a distance, listening to their prayers and intervening and helping them when we saw fit to do so. Jacob's sighting. In the book of Genesis 28:11-19, another encounter between ourselves and Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, is related. At that time humanity had virtually returned to a state of savagery. Sightings of us Elianin had virtually become but legends, as they saw the pagans worshipping the fallen watchers and the renegades. The people of God had begun worshipping us, now calling us their Elohim or their gods, in the same way the pagans called the other extraterrestrials they too adored. For the people of God, Yahweh, our leader, had now become the main God they worshipped, while we, his messengers or angels, were held in similar high esteem. Nothing we told them could convince them that we were beings similar to them. So Jacob was alone in a deserted place at night, and seeing his devotion to God and his effort in mastering the mysteries, we judged him worthy now to be contacted, and to be made one of our messengers among the humans, as his father and grandfather had been. He had fallen asleep when he was awakened by our space vessel landing close to where he was sleeping. The door of the vessel was open, a ladder had been lowered for the visitors to descend, and a strong electric light from it shone on the whole area. As he had never seen such a thing before, Jacob concluded that he was dreaming, and was having a vision from God, as it is written. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold the angels of God ascending and descending. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, thy father, and the God of Isaac. Of course the words truly were, we are the Elianin of whom Abraham and Isaac your father spoke. But having said this, we also urge you to believe that God and his angels truly exist. If and when humans make the effort to master the mysteries of God, as we urge them to do, they would receive the proof by themselves. Because God's angels would appear and tend to them as they do to us, and as they did to the ancient prophets, for nothing has changed. The difference between us and the messengers from God is easily noticed in the scriptures. When one of us was offered food and drink, it is clearly stated that he ate. But when an angel of God was offered food, he never ate, instead he would order the food to be set on an altar as an offering. Then he would set fire on the offering and ascend in the smoke of the sacrifice upwards. Or he would simply disappear from the seer's sight. Now we come to Moses. Moses was one of our prophets after Jacob, who had regular visits from us and who described his sightings and our interactions with him in a most spectacular and detailed manner. Know then, that despite any scientific explanations that would now be given by human scientists, what happened when Moses was in Egypt was both a demonstration of our power and the use of the mysteries that we gave to humanity. For nothing is impossible to God, we tell you again, and not believing that there is a universal God is a very bestial and mortal error that should not even be in your thoughts. Our work with Moses was one that was our last attempt to forever give the law of God, and to firmly establish faith in him among the people of earth, while at the same time ensuring that the memory of us did not disappear from earth for good. The Nephilim had again firmly established themselves on earth, especially in Egypt, where they married the daughters of Noah's descendants by his son Ham, and helped found the first mighty royal dynasties of the pharaohs. Our battles with the renegades were confined to outer space, away from Earth, where we now had to fight their space vessels, before we could enter Earth's space to meet with our prophets who lead the few people of God who existed then, and who gave our side of the story to humanity at that time. Our Council of the Wise decided against any further military interventions against the renegades on the Earth's surface, whenever we could help it. Since they saw that it was exactly what the renegades wanted. As their aim has always been the destruction and the annihilation of the human race, the renegades welcomed the wars, because they could then just watch the sufferings and the deaths of large numbers of our beloved creation. But Earth being now so heavily populated, we could no longer conduct our wars here. All had returned to a near primitive state and idolatry abounded. All extraterrestrials that came to Earth came to be seen as gods. The people who were loyal to us were worshipping Yahweh, the leader of our council of the wise, as God, as I have already said. The rest worshipped the Nephilim. Those who knew of both our stories worshipped us and the Nephilim, by making several different idols of both groups of us. Even the people who traveled with Jacob and who had the opportunity to know our teachings, still superstitiously kept the old idols of the Nephilim that they had brought with them and still prayed to them. On that, Jacob admonished them, as it is written. Then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you and be clean. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hands, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. Genesis 35, 2-4. In the end, our council of the wise decided to concentrate on keeping our memory and the faith in God alive on earth. Telling humans that we were not to be worshipped no longer seemed such a pressing issue. It was decided that when humanity had developed again enough to understand what flying machines and high technology were, and when they had developed their own aircrafts, as we knew they would, then should be the time to again give them the truth about their creation, and about their presence on this planet called Earth. After Jacob and his son Joseph had died, most of the people of God that were in Egypt became pagans and worshipped Api, and many of the other idols the Egyptians made of the renegades. Only a few cared to be educated in the faith of their ancestors, and even while doing the learning, they still worshipped the idols. But Moses was a real seeker, who dared to see beyond the philosophies, the idolatries and the injustices of the Egyptians. It was he who, after realizing that the renegades and the Nephilim were mere living beings, dared to question his teacher's stories. Then he sought and contacted us, in order to know our side of the story. That is why we again saw our hopes renewed and contacted him. We had to use telepathy to bring him to meet us in the mountains. In the biblical book of Exodus, we appeared to Moses for the first time. And the angel of the Lord Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire and the bush was not consumed. Exodus 3:2. As anyone can now understand, a flying vessel landed not far from Moses with a bright orange landing light on. The description that was made of its light behind the bush is similar to the one that a bushman in Papua New Guinea would have made 2 centuries ago and even early this century, if it had landed before him too. This was a confusing and amazing sight, because the bush seemed to be on fire but it did not burn. The scriptures are full of similar descriptions of a lion appearing to other prophets, and this with hundreds and even thousands of years of time between them. Take Nephi, a prophet named in the Book of Mormon. In it is written, There came a pillar of fire and dwelt upon a rock before him. Nephi 1-6. The Book of Mormon. That description is similar to the ones given by Moses and others, as we shall see. It was during that meeting that Moses was told of our conflict with Tiamat, Satan, and his 3 colleagues, the rest of the renegades and the Nephilim. He was given the whole story just as we are giving it to you again now. Then he was told to go and ensure the freedom of the now enslaved descendants of Jacob, and to gather as many people as he could, to whom he would entrust our story for the rest of the humanity of the future, and to get them out of Egypt. It was after that he went and began talking to the people. But his work was very difficult, for those that were put in his charge were a savage, unruly and disobedient crowd who did not have respect for human life and who easily killed each other for the tiniest of reasons. They virtually had to be convinced to believe in the one true God, and the faith had to be implanted so hard in their hearts, and the memory of events before that had to be seared in their minds in a way that they would never forget. First they had to be removed from among the people who refused absolutely to follow us in a manner such that they would never be tempted to go back. Then they had to be taken somewhere where they could not be easily influenced by the renegades. That is why the events at that time had to be unforgettable ones. For before the very famous Exodus as you now know it began, we Elionin encouraged our human helpers to conduct religious evangelical campaigns all over Earth, and in Egypt in particular, to try and win the populations to our side. There were 7 such persons, prophets, similar to Moses at that time. The Nephilim's followers also began doing the same. These campaigns did not go smoothly as there were constant wars between us and the Nephilim, and between their followers and those who were loyal to us. Their people threatened those who tried to follow our prophets, and forced them to change ranks. The Nephilim of course charged their people to instruct the humans, as the renegades are again doing now with the young man from France, that it was in fact Lucifer, Leviathan, Satan and Belial, or Kingu, Namtar, Tiamat and Azag, who created humanity on earth. Yahweh, the leader of our council of the wise, was portrayed as a contradictory despotic liar, and a cruel creator who destroyed and exterminated populations for no important reasons, and when he felt like it. In the end Moses was the only one who managed to gather a large number of people willing to listen to us. The other 6 leaders in other parts of earth were all murdered with their followers, with a few that escaped with their lives being taken into slavery by the followers of the Nephilim. Moses decided that he should present the idea of the one God, with his name being Jehovah/Yahweh that they already heard about, because none of the Hebrews would obey him if he presented Elionin to them as real living beings. Thus he put the seal on our leader becoming and continuing to be worshipped as the God of the Hebrews. When time came for him to conduct our people out of Egypt, we did all we could to ensure that they at least survived. Because even then, the whole pharaonic family of Egypt and their armies were followers of the Nephilim, who explained the danger of there being any group of our followers on earth. They were the ones who instructed the Egyptians to make sure that our followers never left Egypt, and to exterminate them before they could go and set up a nation of their own. That is why they pursued them after they left Egypt. The following biblical passage tells how we protected Moses and the people on their way. And the Lord, or Elionin, went before them by day in a pillar of cloud, to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire, to give them light, to go by day and by night. Exodus 13:21. Here, this pillar of cloud was just a fleet of 10 of our grey-coloured flying vessels which flew slowly in a line ahead of the crowd who then were ordered to follow the vessels. As these were high in the sky, they formed a column, or a horizontal pillar. All space vessels sighted during the day are called clouds in the Bible, because of their color and at default of an adequate description by the primitive people. At night, the vessels switched on strong lights directed to the ground, to allow the people to see where they were going. When the Egyptians, on the orders of the Nephilim through Pharaoh, pursued the people to exterminate them, we again used our vessels to protect them, as it is written. And the angel of the Lord's, or of Elionin, who went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these so that the one came not near the other all night. Genesis 14:19-20. That means that during the night when the people set up camp, the vessels were landed between the Egyptians and the people. Strong spotlights were switched on and directed towards the Egyptians, while the people remained in darkness and could sleep in peace. While our officers who were in the vessels watched the Egyptians, and stopped them from coming near the people. And to cross the sea, Moses was also again helped, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord, Elionin, caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land and the waters were divided. Exodus 14:21. This passage says clearly that the parting from the sea was caused to happen from above. A repulsion beam that pushed the water back was used. This was felt as a violent wind that blew in the middle of the sea. The water was thus held apart for a while, allowing the people to pass through to the other side. Anyway, we chose a rather shallow part of the sea of reeds for them to cross. Someone might ask, why did we just not take them in our vessels, and deposit them where we wanted Moses to take them? To that, we say that it was important that these people learnt a few lessons, and also learnt to take care of themselves. Also, it was important that they believed in God Most High like we do, and that they understood that we, Elionin, were not that God. If we had made the task easier for them, we would have failed in wiping idolatry and the worship of the Nephilim out of their hearts, which was the most important thing we wanted before anything else. And not only that, they would have simply started worshipping us again and called us gods. And our course of action was amply justified during that adventure, as we shall prove. The exodus of the people lasted a very long number of years, and some of them even set up in villages and encampments and remained in those, while the others continued on. This was because, even with the vigilance of the watchers that protected them from the air, Satan and his fallen watchers still had access to their former followers that had come among Moses' people, thanks to miniature transmitters hidden in the idols that they had brought with them. Through those, Satan and his friends told the people that Moses was leading them to their death, that he had brought them out of Egypt to be exterminated by Yahweh. And those who had these idols were easily persuaded to rebel and to drop out of the long exodus. Because most of those who had come had been slaves, and their original reasons for following Moses was the prospect of escaping their masters and regaining their freedom. Once free, they quickly decided to stop traveling, set up camps and refused to budge, preferring to worship the idols they already had, and out of which voices came from time to time, instead of a nameless God who Moses told them about, and who they could not see or hear. But more of those who had idols still followed the crowd, in order to go as far away from the Egyptians as possible, and because their needs were met by Moses. Next, Moses again had to be called to meet us, this time on Mount Sinai, in order for us to again give him some equipment which comprised a transmitter and receiver, and also to teach him how to use it, as well as giving the law, of course. But this transmitter was a new improved model, different from the ones that our earlier prophets had been given. This one functioned by an atomic-powered battery to which was also attached another machine that was to be used to make food. We also gave him the divine laws destined for the people that were in his care, laws by which we too abide, and the proper way to realize their divinity. Here we would like to bring to your attention that those people that left Egypt with Moses were not all Hebrews. Moses was not told to get out the Hebrews only. He was instructed to take with him all those who were willing to disassociate themselves from the Egyptians and the Nephilim, and to listen to and follow us, Elianan. Those people who were willing to follow our teaching and to believe in God as we believed, whether they were Hebrews or not, and that is what Moses did. All the Hebrews left Egypt only because they were all slaves, and were hated as Hebrews. But many of them were also followers of, and worshipped the Nephilim and the renegades. They also were just as savage, violent and hostile as the rest of humans everywhere. They were particularly stirred into attempting to assault the mountain where Yahweh, our leader, met Moses, in order to capture him, as Tiamat, Satan, promised them that he would be a better god to them. One such rejection of our leader and of God was demonstrated by the golden calf that those people made while Moses was in the mountain, meeting our leader. Along the whole of the Exodus, Moses was subjected to verbal abuse, and sometimes he was even threatened with violence. As long as these people behaved like that and swayed in their loyalty to Moses and to us, we could not allow them to reach the country that we had destined to only those who would be loyal to us. That is why they remained in the desert for 40 years. Because it became necessary that all those who had come from Egypt died, before their children installed themselves in the new land. For it was obvious that those who had not known slavery and the Nephilim would be easily taught and made to obey than those who had been exposed to the Nephilim's teachings. The 10 Commandments. Now, Yahweh our leader had to meet Moses himself, as he did with all the prophets who were entrusted with very important and history-making tasks. The commandments that were given to Moses for all humanity at that time are the same that we had already given to the Egyptians before the Nephilim got to them. In reality, Moses was given 2 different sets of commandments, which were both worded differently. The first time he descended from the mountain, he had brought with him the first laws, which would have been more liberating to humanity. Then when he came down from the mountain and found that they had made the golden calf idol, he broke those first tables of the laws in anger. Then he returned to us to report on what he had found. It was then decided that humanity of that time was simply not ready for those rules aimed at divine realization. Moses was advised to render occult the first laws, teaching them to a chosen few. Then he was given another set of laws. Those were the ones that he openly brought from the mountain the second time. They are the same that we shall give again now, only we shall interpret them again for man of today, since the time of Moses is long gone. But nothing has changed. Nothing has been taken out of those laws. They are thus, as it is written. And the leader of Elianim spoke all the words, saying, I am Yahweh your Creator, who has brought you out of the lands of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. 1. You shall have no other gods before God Most High. 2. You shall not make any graven image to yourself, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow yourself to them, nor serve them, for it is written, I, the God that is your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. 3. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for your God will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. 4. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, your servant, nor your maid, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days we made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day, wherefore God blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. 5. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord God gives you. 6. You shall not murder. 7. You shall not commit adultery. 8. You shall not steal. 9. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, nor his wife, nor his manservant, nor his maid, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Those were the laws given to Moses. Everyone who believes in this message should also take those laws to heart, and respect and obey them as those who followed Moses were expected to. But know that religion was instituted for man, man was not created for religion. The laws were made for man, man was not made for the law. Therefore you must live with the times. And as time goes by, the law has to be adapted to keep in step with the time, because those 10 commandments were also intended to be civil laws by which to live. So once again, let us see those commandments, and let us tell humanity of today how we, Elianim, interpret them for this time in which you live. Now let us expound these 10 commandments in details. The first commandment. We say, having given you those 10 commandments and the others that are in the scriptures anew, you must live in the time you are in, and interpret them accordingly. As I have just said, they were made for humanity and not the other way round. Without the existence of man, the commandments would be useless. Certain customs and traditions that were acceptable at the time of Moses are no longer in practice now. Attitudes that were acceptable in those days have become intolerable and even unheard of now. The legal verdicts dispensed and imposed by Moses are now considered barbaric and sanguinary. Acts that used to be considered awful crimes are now benign to contemporary man. Accordingly, you must see that Moses' primitive interpretation of these commandments does not become a chain around your necks in view of your way of living now. The first commandment is to be obeyed as it is expected to be, because it is a perfect law. Therefore only God Almighty, the God of your heart, should be your God. You must never worship anything that exists, has existed or shall exist, if it can be seen, heard, touched, tasted, smelt, felt or easily fathomed. You were created in the image of God, and only that God that is within you, and is part of you, is worthy of your worship, and you are all aware that God within can neither be seen, heard, touched, tasted, smelt, felt or easily fathomed, he just is. In order to realize your divinity, you should do all you can, sacrifice all you have if needed, in order to succeed. For that is the only reason for your transmigration on earth now. For that you must research, investigate and try all lineages of mysteries and wisdom, until you find the one to which you properly belong in order to access that divinity. Trust God within you, and in time, you will surely find the Master who will come to instruct you and thousands like you, for that is how transmigration is organized. And when you have found your master, it is to him that you shall give all the time, attention and devotion that was programmed in you, and that, during your divine realization. For to him, you owe even more dedication and devotion than to your own Father. And to him and only him you owe something close to adoration and worshipful devotion. That is what we Lionen have all done and how we have proceeded in our world over the ages, and how we always will. But you shall not waste your time in devotion and worship for any realized religious leader or teacher who does not give you or is not willing to give you the means to realize yourself and raise yourself to his level. Your divine realization is the primordial reason for your presence on earth. Therefore do not waste any of the precious time you have, when you are presented with an opportunity to get on the way. There are few genuine lineages of mysteries left on the earth such as the Essene lineage, as held by this, our little messenger Desiree. There are also the Jews who hold a perfect lineage quite similar to hers, since Essenism is a branch and a lineage of the Jewish religion. But seek those that are messianist in orientation, and by that we mean Yeshua's messianism. Seek those lineages of the Jewish faith that are not hostile to the teachings of the late Rabbi Yeshua of Nazareth. Many of them exist nowadays. But seek not only those of Yeshua's but also those of wise men of other religious denominations who do not despise or disregard other true lineages, and who instruct people in the mysteries using the mystical Kabbalah. Because the rest of the branches of the Jewish faith have now fallen into a monarchic, conservative and even selfish way of refusing to disclose their knowledge to all. Such is the kind of attitude that Rabbi Yeshua was opposed to. Then there are many Buddhist lineages, such as those handed down by the Karmapas. They have the mysteries, and are willing to impart their knowledge to real seekers. The only problem with them is that their teachings are in need of modernization. But our little messenger here is instructed to give you what you ultimately seek. There are a few Muslim sects, the best being the Sufis, who have 10 lineages that some amongst you can seek. But they too need to be modernized, because a lot of traditional and sectarian beliefs have long been introduced into their teachings. As well as these 4 groups, there are a few Christian masters who are working in silence and are unwilling to come out in the open, because of the intolerance that exists in Christianity. There are also a few indigenous wise men throughout your world that still have the mysteries in full. Seek them out if you wish, and learn from them, but do not limit yourselves to them only. Those are the ones you should seek and go to, for your progress. But as you shall see, there can only be one teacher on earth that could allow you to totally break through to the light, and that is the one that was chosen as your group teacher before you transmigrated. He or she has the complete knowledge to bring you to success. Seek him out. But others could help you on the way. Some for meditation, others for correcting your attitude toward yourself, towards others and towards the way you see those dissimilar to you. There are still some others more, for preparing you for the ordeal ahead, and for the dark night of the soul, and finally for preparing and helping you to help others to do the same. But ultimately you will find the lineage that was yours from the beginning of your transmigration journey. When you have found that lineage, you shall know that you have found your real home and you would stop seeking. Then you will begin working on your divine realization. Now if you ask us which one amongst these ways is the best, we'll say the Essene way, as presented by our messenger, which Rabbi Yeshua Bar Joseph's way was also. Note that divine realization should allow you to help your fellow humans without the conventional human means. For example, you should be able to cure illnesses without performing any medical operations or administering man-made drugs and medicine. You should be able to live in opulence and comfort, you and those who are your responsibility. Past, present and future should hold no secrets to you. Neither should the lives of those you come across. You should be all-knowing, all-seeing and all-powerful. A divinely realized being who should put his knowledge to good use for himself and the rest of the entire human race. Joining a religious group that does nothing but sing mantras without knowing how to use those for the good of mankind is a total waste of time. Becoming the devotee or follower of a seemingly or truly realized master, who does not help you to become like himself and to develop the same powers as himself, and simply being amongst his throngs of followers is a total waste of time. For when he dies and leaves earth, you shall be left empty-handed, and all the time spent following and worshipping him would have been useless and wasted. Instead, seek a master who might not have millions of followers, but if he or she is willing to actively help you progress, he should be the best choice. Furthermore, going to a place of worship is good for the communion of souls with lightly orientated people, but useless if you do not realize that God is within you. A person that respects divine laws, that respects and does good by others is better, more righteous and worthy than one who is a regular frequenter of places of worship and tithe payer, who does not practice what is in the law of God the Mighty One. It is absolutely useless and very sinful to worship Rabbi Yeshua, his mother, his apostles, and a host of long-dead religious leaders and teachers, whoever they may be, or praying to them, without ever mentioning the God who they themselves worshipped. Those people were living beings like you, who like you, came to earth for their divine realization, only, they succeeded. You must all therefore strive to do the same, and even do better than they did. Not by praying to them and asking them to do the work for you. You must come out of the conditioning you were born in, and realize that those people are dead and gone. They did not ask for, neither would they want you to worship them. For that is an abomination in the eyes of God the Mighty One. Praying to or worshipping dead former prophets would make absolutely no difference for your divine realization. You must do as they did, by yourself. Yeshua came and pointed out the way that humanity had to follow. Instead of looking at what he was pointing at, humanity is now stopped and stalled, staring at the tip of Yeshua's finger. Oh man, wake up and see what he was trying to show you. Stop worshipping him, and start worshipping the God that Yeshua, himself, worshipped, the God whom he wanted you to see and to worship. In line of what I have just taught you, Yeshua was worthy of great respect and veneration only when he was alive, and only by his followers alone. Because they were those who profited from his teachings and who managed to realize their divinity thanks to him. But worshipping Jesus and all the others now that they are no longer alive, breaks the first commandment, and is an abomination in our eyes and to God the Mighty One. But asking him to intercede for you during your prayers to God is not. In the same way as praying to God and asking him to grant your demands through the merits of Jesus is not an abomination, but praying to Jesus and calling him God while excluding God himself is an abomination. The second commandment. In the same way, do not make any statues, likeness, images, carvings of any living beings, any humanoid or any animal, either dead or alive, that is, do not make them with the aim of rendering a cult to them. Nor of any planets and stars that exist, have, and shall exist, with the intention of adoring those. Do not bow down to those, or worship or pay any homage to them in any manner. For such would be denying God Most High and that he is one, and thus you will be putting them before him. Therefore parading crosses of Yeshua being tortured on a cross, through the streets of cities, or statues of him as a baby and statues of his mother is an abomination. Also the kneeling to, bowing to and worshipping of those, is an abomination in our eyes and to God the Mighty One. Honor should go to God that made you, and to no other. Please, note that we do not wish to discourage art in any form. We ourselves love and thrive on it. We even wish hereby to encourage you to be creative in the media of painting, sculpture, drawing, carving, filming, designing, building, singing, acting and landscaping arts. Be creative and enjoy your lives and your environments with every fiber of your being. It is only idolatry that we want to discourage and that we are warning you about. The third commandment. Never use the holy names of God Almighty for vain oaths, vain invocations, vain accords, promises or agreements that have nothing to do with divine work. Do not swear, pleasant or amuse yourselves in ridiculous songs, conversations, speeches and cusses in association with divine names in whatever form and in whichever language. For every time you say or pronounce a divine name, the divine spirit and power that is associated with, and is assigned to that particular name is immediately summoned to your side, who shall report to God on all your ensuing words, oaths, actions and attitudes. The useless and careless invocations of divine names are an abomination in our eyes and to God the Mighty One. For God should never be mocked. The fourth commandment. Remember why you came to earth. Worshipping God, whether you are part of a religious denomination or not, is primordial, but you first have to live in order to do this. Therefore set a day apart, in which you must dedicate yourself to honoring and thinking of God, acknowledging His existence and sovereignty with prayers and acts of adoration, either by yourself or with like-minded people. That day must be holy to you and to all those in your care and in your home. If you can help it, do not do any work on that day. But as we have already said, those rules were made for man, so the Sabbath was instituted for man, not man for the Sabbath. Therefore live with the times. Before, people took this law to extremes, not even washing their bodies or warming up their food on the day of the Lord. Such fanaticism is not required of you now. Cleaning your body in order to appear presentable before God is not only acceptable but necessary, the same as cleaning the body of a baby that has soiled himself on the Sabbath is not only acceptable, but also necessary and hygienic. Before, people considered it work if someone wrote even a single letter or a single symbol on a piece of paper, or warmed food cooked the previous day for the Sabbath. Such fanaticism is not required of you. Simply writing someone's address or telephone number on the Sabbath day is not working. But you will break the Sabbath if you install yourself at your desk to continue with the type of work you usually do during the week. You will break it if you avoid praying and paying homage to God, in order to write piles of letters to catch up on mundane correspondence. But there are exceptions with this law. All works of charity and of people like doctors are permitted, if it is urgent to save a human life. Therefore all those who work in the emergency departments of hospitals do not break the Sabbath if their shift work falls on that day, or when necessary. Doctors should never schedule surgical operations for the Sabbath day in order to pay homage to God. But if any emergency operations are necessary, they should leave their church, synagogue, temple or mosque and go and save the life of the patient when asked, or when necessary. They do not break the Sabbath, and what is more, they are doing a divinely commendable deed. Saving a human life is more important than meditating. Some fanatical people consider it a sin to drive a vehicle to go to their place of worship. That is wrong. You should make all efforts to get to the place of worship on time. Therefore driving a vehicle in order to go and worship God is not an infraction of the law. You invented vehicles to be able to travel faster. It is similar to walking. The vehicle simply replaces your feet and helps you to get there earlier and without exerting yourself too much. But driving a vehicle for the sole aim of going to do your regular work on the day of the Lord, except to save a life, is a terrible sin that should be avoided. Therefore, respect the day of the Lord, and keep it holy. Let every person that lives in your house and the confines of your property do the same. Not even an animal that works for you during the week should be made to work on that day. Instead, it should be fed and left to repose itself. Guests staying in your house should respect the law of reposing and not working, whether they believe in God or not. If they refuse to obey your wishes, they should be asked to leave. Do not reach any halfway understandings with anyone about that. It should be your way, or no way at all. You should prepare all week and look forward to the day that has been traditionally dedicated to the Lord in your religious denomination. So much that you should even go with less food during the week in order to celebrate that day in abundance. On that day, clean and adorn yourself to look good in your own eyes and in the eyes of those who see you. Adorn your table with the fineries that you possess, and serve the finest foodstuffs and wines. But at the same time, avoid excessive indulgence and drunkenness. In short, simply make it to be a very special day, distinctively different from all the others. With regards to asking those who break the Sabbath in your house to leave, we urge you to never compromise your quest for divinity. It is best to fall out with a human being, than risk the wrath of God the Mighty One. Everything you do while observing the 10 primordial laws of God is taken into account. Do not for one moment think that any of your efforts are wasted. You shall realize just what advantages come with obeying these laws, when you begin to acquaint yourselves with the mysteries. Respect the day of the Lord and keep it holy. But as we have said, learn to recognize the times when concessions are necessary and acceptable. Always be obedient and even a slave to God, but sometimes when necessary, you do not have to be a slave to the law, or to your religious denomination, or to your tradition. The fifth commandment. This also is a perfect law. You must show all due respect to your parents. On no account must you abuse, insult, neglect or disrespect them. In our eyes and before God, nothing justifies an appalling attitude towards parents. Let your parents be in your eyes as God that you have never seen, and show them the same respect as you show your monarchs and all people in authority in your countries. The same as they had looked after you when you were young, and even if they had not looked after you properly because of their poverty or state of physical or mental health, do look after your parents from the moment you have the means, and in their old age. If you have the comfort and the means to support them when they are old and senile, do not put them away in a hostile hostel or old people's home. But let them live their final years with you, surrounded by the attention, companionship and the warmth of their children and descendants. The only exception to this rule should be if their state of health is such that they need constant professional help and attention which you could not provide, or if they are a danger to you, to themselves and to others. But if in their old age, their attitude or habits make living with your spouse or your chosen life companion difficult, arrange for your parents to have a habitation in the grounds of your property or immediately close to your home, where you would be able to care for them without them destroying your own relationships with others. But on no account should you let them interfere with your efforts, in your search for divine realization. And, if despite your efforts, their attitude is such that you cannot live happily with them, then separate yourself from them and suppress all physical contact with them. But still endeavor to care for them from afar, as much as you can. And even then, on no account, should you return their abusive attitude in a manner alike to theirs. Obey your parents, no matter how old or stupid you may think they are. Thus if you are ready and on your way to go to church, synagogue, mosque or temple, and one of your parents asks you to do something useful to them, like fetching water for example, you must first fetch them water, before going to the place of worship. In this case, obeying your parent in doing something useful and needed to him, is much more important than going to the place of worship. Refusing to obey such a reasonable request from a parent in order to go to the place of worship, will not excuse you before God. You have broken God's law of obedience to your parents. However, if a parent stops you from going to the place of worship and asks you instead to go and worship the devil with him, or to go and carry out a robbery, you must not obey him or even listen to him. Because he is asking you to break the first commandment, or the eighth commandment that says, "You shall not steal." Notice the difference between the first and second situations, and be wise. Be perfect and impeccable, as the Lord your God wants you to be. For that is why that law was given to you. The sixth commandment. You shall on no account kill anyone or anything for fun, or out of jealousy, nor to disguise a crime committed either by yourself, your relatives, your friends, or for someone else or for money. But the same as with the other commandments, there are attenuating circumstances even for this law. Thus, if you kill a human being that is trying to murder you, after you have exhausted all attempts at escaping them or protecting yourself, you do not sin in the eyes of God Most High, nor in our eyes. The same goes with animals. While it is permissible to kill an animal that is trying to kill you, or that would otherwise kill you if you spare its life, it is a terrible and an unforgivable sin to kill any animal for no apparent reason, or for sport. If you live where fruit, vegetables, eggs and milk and cheese are in abundance, you shall refrain as much as possible from consuming meat. It is however acceptable to kill an animal and eat it, when you are faced with a famine and where food is not in abundance. Therefore if you are in danger of being killed by an animal, or of being murdered by a human being, try to simply wound them in order to incapacitate them and to give you the chance to escape. If it is a human being, let him be judged and dealt with by the law of the country where you both happen to be. Few animals are murderers by nature. They kill to survive or for self-protection. Therefore if you wound and escape from an animal that was trying to kill you, it would immediately abandon pursuing you to attend to its wounds. But if despite your efforts to only wound them, you kill an animal or a human being in order to save your own life, you do not sin. But never use excessive force when you are able to escape with less damage to your aggressor. Make use of mercy, pity, love, compassion and understanding when dealing with other living beings. Love and protect them as you would love and protect yourselves, and as you would like to be loved and protected. The seventh commandment. A vow taken before God, in the name of God, or over any of the existing sacred scriptures should be scrupulously kept. Thus, marriage vows are very divinely binding and you should never break such vows, so as not to become your own killer. Beware of making any promises that you might not be able to keep in the future. The law of faithfulness in a marriage appeals to your sense of freedom. You are free when you are making a vow. Know and value that freedom, and do not let any carnal feelings control you. Instead, be the master of yourself and of your feelings. However, no matter how strong you are in keeping vows, feelings of love cannot be forced. So it was divinely decreed and permitted to annul vows and to peacefully divorce a partner with whom a vow had been taken. Therefore it is necessary to vow to be faithful to your partner for as long as love unites you, and as long as that vow keeps you both together. The annulment of the vow and the divorce should be undertaken as happily as the marriage and vow were entered into. We, ourselves, have found that it is possible to have feelings of love for more than one person. We have always felt free to show love to all those persons, without making any promises to them, or taking any vows with them. In acting that way, we are also making use of our freedom of decision. So unless you are capable of having true feelings for another person, feelings that can last a lifetime, do not selfishly gamble with another being's feelings. Always be sincere with them, explaining that you are only capable for loving for the moment and for as long as the feeling lasts. There is, and there should be no divinely binding laws amongst you, such as the indissoluble bounds of matrimony imposed on anyone. No religious or civil authority should enforce such a regulation, because God does not ask that of you. Any love that has died should be laid to rest. Any marriage that has broken down should be dissolved, so that both partners may love other people and remain friends with each other, much more so if children were produced within such a marriage. When children have been produced in a marriage, though the vows may be immediately annulled to allow both partners to be free to love other persons, the couple should never live in separate dwellings until the children have become adults, and have experienced love for themselves. They should always be told of any annulment of vows immediately, but the family unit should never be broken until the children are ready to leave home. However, a family unit in which there exists violence should be immediately split, for the well-being of the children, and for both spouses' peace of mind. No children should be permitted to remain with a brutal or abusive parent. And when the abuse takes place between the spouses only, they could only be better parents for their children when they live apart. That is the concession for this commandment. But while you are tied by a vow, keep it holy until it is annulled, and do never commit adultery or perjury of any kind, especially when you have taken the vow of Nazirite in order to realize your divinity. That is how we, Elianin, deal with the seventh commandment. The eighth commandment. You should never take, extort or appropriate anything belonging to another person without their consent. But there are concessions even with this law. As such, if for example you have not eaten for a week, or if you have no means to obtain any sustenance despite all your efforts, it is permissible to take and eat food you find unattended, in order to survive. But before taking it, you should make all efforts to find its owner and ask for their permission to partake of it. If they cannot be found, you should arrange to leave a message or another way of letting them know that it was you who took their property, promising to replace or pay for it as soon as, and when possible. Even if it be in the middle of a desert, you should provide means for the owner to find you easily and claim their due. For if that food is cooked or prepared, it definitely belongs to someone, and when taking such food, do not take more than you need for that moment only. Also, when you find someone with food after going for a week without any, you must ask them for it. If they refuse to give it, never abuse, attack or hurt them to take it to feed yourself. You shall walk away without anger, as you too expect goodness from God, who sees all and who eventually will provide you with nourishment. A warning goes here to anyone whose food has been taken in such a manner and to whom a note, a payment or a promise of payment had been left. You shall be understanding and not in any way try to punish such a person, or get them arrested in order to be punished by the law of the land. Be forgiving and accept their excuse and payment, just as you expect to be forgiven by God when you sin without being caught. It is for this reason that you were advised in this law to let poor people glean from your fields, and to reserve a corner of your field where some products may be taken by those who desperately need them. You should walk away without anger if you find that your food had been taken by a more hungry person, for God who sees all will provide you with what you need, and in more abundance. By comporting yourselves in such a way, you shall be without fault before the Lord your God. Do not take anything belonging to another person in order to have more than they have. By this, we do not mean that you should not have more than another person, only that you should deserve what you have by earning it honestly. Work honestly and hard to obtain everything you need, either to live simply, in comfort, or opulence. You will enjoy it more the better, knowing that all that you have was honestly and honorably obtained, and that you did not do anything to offend either your fellow man, and God the Mighty One. The 9th commandment. For absolutely no reason should you lie or accuse another person of something they have not done. Neither should you make such a declaration on the behalf of another person, to help them get out of a difficult situation. This law concerns and touches all situations and all persons regardless of who or what they are. For every single false accusation that you make against another person shall be held against you by us a lion, and by God the Mighty One, whether your trumpery is discovered on earth or not. Therefore, if you have committed an offense, admit it. Do not accuse another person. If you made the accusation because of the resemblance of the wrongly accused person with the perpetrator, please correct your mistake as soon as you are aware of it, and acquit the innocent person. Thus you will be found righteous before us a lion, and before God the Mighty One. The 10th commandment. Do not covet your neighbor's house, nor his riches and belongings, and do not covet his wife, or his servants. It is perfectly normal to admire your neighbor's house, if it is larger, prettier and better decorated than your own. It is perfectly normal to admire his wife, if she is prettier, or his children, if they are more intelligent. And it is also normal to wish you could have servants helping you with domestic duties around your home and property like your neighbor. All of that is very natural, we too used to have such feelings. But what is against God's law is when your admiration and covetousness become such, as you lose sense of reality and become vicious. It is against God's law when you become so hateful, resentful and jealous that you become a nuisance to your neighbor and to his family. It is against God's law when you would resort to slander, malicious reviling, gossip, criminal destructiveness, and even murder in order to annoy your neighbor or to appropriate what he has. If you admire your neighbor's possessions, strive to work even harder in order to possess similar or even better things, without however making a nuisance of yourself, or letting him know that you are in competition with him. If he acquired his wealth by right of inheritance, then it is according to divine judgment and disposition. In that case, content yourself with what you have and count your blessings in other situations in your life. Thus you shall be found righteous before the Lord your God. But having said this, it is very acceptable and very good to wish to live in opulence. In fact, we even recommend it. It is not, neither has it ever been the will of God for any human beings to be poor or deprived. Therefore, do your best to live as well as you possibly can, and try and make your life better and more comfortable as you want. But do it the right way. Acquire riches, but in an honest and humanely legal way. Honest ambition and healthy competition will contribute to evolution and a better way of life for all. We recommend all those who believe in God, and those who will come to learn the mysteries from our messenger, to live by those amended rules. We shall stop here today. As anyone who gets to read this message will understand, we had been, as well as giving our message, trying to prove that beings from other worlds have indeed visited this planet and continue to do so. With the following installments we shall continue to point out more examples whenever possible. But most of all, we shall concentrate on warning humanity about the young man from France and his activities, and give our side of the story to cover what we believe he shall be telling humanity. We shall also enlighten humanity on other matters and on Rabbi Yeshua, before leaving you all, to freely make up your own minds. We urge all those who get to meet this young African female messenger of ours, to give her all the help they can. Go to her also to learn more about the tenets of these 10 commandments, and to learn how to realize your divinity. I lay in bed for a while, wide awake with tears streaming from my eyes. I did not understand why I was crying, only that I felt better the more I cried. I was at the reasoning that this time, it all made sense to me. With this new interpretation, the 10 commandments were acceptable for our time, and easy to follow and keep. Finally the tears dried of themselves and I went back to sleep.